You've seen it in her eyes that flicker, that spark just before she tells you no, but it's not rejection. It's the beginning of a game older than love, older than fear. You think she runs from power, but she only runs from the man who doesn't know how to wield it. There's a silence behind her smile, a silence that wants to be broken, not by kindness, but by conquest. And you, always so careful, so reasonable, so controlled, never noticed how she leaned in when you grew cold, never noticed how her heart raced when yours withdrew. There is a room in her soul filled with broken statues of men who knelt too soon. She feeds them to the part of herself she denies, the part that longs to be undone. You've mistaken her cruelty for confusion, her rebellion for strength. But what if she only becomes a goddess when you become the thing she fears most? The god who refuses to be tamed. Keep listening. The truth isn't in what she says. It's buried in what she begs you not to become. You never noticed the shadow woven through her laughter until it tightened, softly, imperceptibly, around your throat. It was not a threat, at least. Not one you could see. Instead, it was something subtle, delicate like velvet, crafted with intention yet hidden behind a veil of playful defiance. You recall the moment clearly now, her gaze lingering just a fraction too long after she whispered a gentle denial. Her fingertips danced lightly along your wrist, not holding you but holding something of you captive. And you, in your certainty, thought yourself the victor, thought yourself immune. But you were always blindest when your eyes were wide open. She constructed that velvet noose from words unspoken, from smiles offered but quickly withdrawn. It tightened every time you approached with softness, slackened slightly whenever your voice hardened. Your posture stiffened. Strange, wasn't it? How easily she surrendered ground when you showed indifference. How fiercely she resisted when your heart opened in earnest. Perhaps you dismissed it as mere caprice, as the meaningless ebb and flow of attraction. But beneath this current moved something far darker, more deliberate, a yearning born from a place she herself would never admit existed. You imagine now her private world, the invisible cage in which she willingly locked herself, chains crafted not from steel but from the bitter longing to be mastered. You have glimpsed this cage in rare moments of vulnerability, in the softness that flickered briefly behind eyes otherwise hardened by pride. You saw it once, clear as glass, in the trembling of her lip when you refused to yield, when your tone turned cold and your mercy vanished. In that instant, her resistance faltered not out of fear, but from a deeper, unsettling excitement. Consider now the paradox woven through every gesture, every word, every delicate cruelty she inflicted upon you. She pretended disdain at your harshness, yet secretly craved the sharp edge of your indifference. She murmured pleas for tenderness, yet recoiled when it was given freely, without demand or consequence. Why did her eyes sparkle most fiercely when you turned away, unmoved, silent, and resolute? Why did her breathing quicken only when you withdrew, leaving her alone with her secret hunger for defeat? You could sense it, though you never named it, this silent, agonizing desire to yield. It terrified you, perhaps even more than it terrified her. But there is something intoxicating about a danger willingly courted, about stepping toward an edge she secretly hopes you'll force her to cross. You dismissed her games as whims, as fickle tests designed to torment. You failed to recognize the hidden, solemn invitation beneath her provocations. And now, looking back, you realize each act of defiance was not resistance. It was prayer, a plea whispered into darkness for a hand strong enough to break her pride and claim her submission. What strange weakness, you wonder, lies within such secret desires, a soul desperate for freedom yet compulsively crafting its own bondage. She despised the gentleman, the yielding man, precisely because he denied her this paradoxical release. She punished him for his patience, punished him for his kindness, not because she despised virtue, but because virtue alone left her hollow, unfulfilled. Her true craving was born from something colder, crueler. She needed a force greater than her will, a force unmoved by sentiment, undistracted by compassion. She needed to collide with an indifference vast enough to finally break her, to shatter the illusion she constructed day by day. Perhaps this revelation disturbs you, unsettles you to your core. And why shouldn't it? You spent your life believing desire was rooted in affection, trust, mutual warmth. You thought sincerity and openness were the ultimate foundations of attraction. Yet every silence she embraced, every cold dismissal she savored, pointed towards something entirely different, something bleak yet undeniably human. Her hunger was existential, her yearning bitter, born from the terrifying freedom of choice itself. What she sought was a limit she could never willingly impose upon herself, a boundary drawn only by the ruthless, uncaring hand of someone stronger. Yet even now, knowing this truth, you resist. Something within you rebels, cries out in protest. It cannot be. You insist that she craves defeat, humiliation, or even the gentle violence of submission. Yet ask yourself honestly, when did she seem most fully alive? Was it in the moments of comfort and security? Or was it when uncertainty lingered like an unspoken threat between you? When did her spirit burn brightest? When you were soft, open, giving, or when you became cold, distant, indifferent to her protestations? The truth, you discover, is crueler than you imagined. For in those darker moments, when your heart hardened and your voice sharpened, she revealed herself utterly. She showed you glimpses of a strange and uncomfortable ecstasy, a trembling anticipation she masked poorly with feigned outrage. And perhaps you recoiled at this knowledge, retreated back into your own comfortable illusions about love and desire. But she could never retreat, not entirely. Her secret longed to be known, longed for a presence bold enough to strip away the masks she wore so skillfully. You might call this twisted, disturbing, a cruel joke played by nature upon hearts yearning for gentleness and sincerity. Yet can you deny the power she willingly gave away, the power she desperately wished for someone else to hold? She did not crave love that nurtured or healed. She craved love that challenged, that conquered, that defeated. She longed to meet her match not in kindness, but in strength. And now, reflecting upon all this, you wonder who you truly are, whether you are capable of fulfilling such ruthless longing. Could you become the hand firm enough to tighten the velvet noose she wove so deliberately? Could you silence your heart long enough to become the cold, indifferent master she secretly craved? These questions gnaw at your conscience, refusing easy answers. But perhaps the discomfort is necessary. Perhaps recognizing the shadow of desire is the first step toward an awakening more profound, more unsettling than you dared imagine. Still, you hesitate. Still, you doubt. Yet somewhere deep within yourself, beneath your carefully crafted decency, lies something darker, something cruel enough, strong enough, indifferent enough to answer the silent prayers hidden in her defiance. The velvet noose she crafted waits patiently, prepared to tighten, longing for your strength. And you, at last, understand the greatest cruelty was never hers. It was yours in denying her the defeat she craved more desperately than love itself. You've stood before her 1,000 times, yet never truly seen her because seeing her clearly meant confronting something within yourself far darker than mere attraction. The first time you noticed the paradox was when you dared to meet her gaze directly, searching her eyes for truth, expecting to see warmth or fear, affection or hatred. Instead, you saw nothing, an abyss staring back, devoid of reflection, revealing only an emptiness that both beckoned and repelled you. Her eyes held no answers, only questions, questions she never intended you to solve. She carried herself as though made of glass, delicate and brittle, threatening to shatter at the slightest touch. And yet, when you reached out with gentleness, your fingertips felt not softness but resistance, cold and impenetrable. She would not yield to kindness, nor soften in the face of compassion. Instead, she hardened, recoiled, rejected your sincerity. It was only when your gaze turned indifferent, only when your touch withdrew, that you felt her lean forward ever so slightly, reaching toward the absence of your attention. The truth, you discover, is crueler than you imagined. For in those darker moments, when your heart hardened and your voice sharpened, she revealed herself utterly. She showed you glimpses of a strange and uncomfortable ecstasy, a trembling anticipation she masked poorly with feigned outrage. And perhaps you recoiled at this knowledge, retreated back into your own comfortable illusions about love and desire. But she could never retreat, not entirely. Her secret longed to be known, longed for a presence bold enough to strip away the masks she wore so skillfully. You might call this twisted, disturbing, a cruel joke played by nature upon hearts yearning for gentleness and sincerity. Yet can you deny the power she willingly gave away, the power she desperately wished for someone else to hold? She did not crave love that nurtured or healed. She craved love that challenged, that conquered, that defeated. She longed to meet her match not in kindness, but in strength. And now, reflecting upon all this, you wonder who you truly are, whether you are capable of fulfilling such ruthless longing. Could you become the hand firm enough to tighten the velvet noose she wove so deliberately? Could you silence your heart long enough to become the cold, indifferent master she secretly craved? These questions gnaw at your conscience, refusing easy answers. But perhaps the discomfort is necessary. Perhaps recognizing the shadow of desire is the first step toward an awakening more profound, more unsettling than you dared imagine. Still, you hesitate. Still, you doubt. Yet somewhere deep within yourself, beneath your carefully crafted decency, lies something darker, something cruel enough, strong enough, indifferent enough to answer the silent prayers hidden in her defiance. The velvet noose she crafted waits patiently, prepared to tighten, longing for your strength. And you, at last, understand the greatest cruelty was never hers. It was yours in denying her the defeat she craved more desperately than love itself. You've stood before her 1,000 times, yet never truly seen her, because seeing her clearly meant confronting something within yourself far darker than mere attraction. The first time you noticed the paradox was when you dared to meet her gaze directly, searching her eyes for truth, expecting to see warmth or fear, affection or hatred. Instead, you saw nothing, an abyss staring back, devoid of reflection, revealing only an emptiness that both beckoned and repelled you. Her eyes held no answers, only questions, questions she never intended you to solve. She carried herself as though made of glass, delicate and brittle, threatening to shatter at the slightest touch. And yet, when you reached out with gentleness, your fingertips felt not softness but resistance, cold and impenetrable. She would not yield to kindness, nor soften in the face of compassion. Instead, she hardened, recoiled, rejected your sincerity. It was only when your gaze turned indifferent, only when your touch withdrew, that you felt her lean forward ever so slightly, reaching toward the absence of your attention. Why, you wondered, did her reflection vanish precisely when you sought it most desperately? She wore masks of charm, laughter, even sorrow, but beneath each lay a void carefully maintained, purposefully constructed. Her soul was a hall of mirrors, each reflection crafted to distort rather than reveal, each image designed to deflect clarity and preserve mystery. And yet, paradoxically, she resented those who refused to be deceived, who stood unmoved by her illusions. She punished honesty because honesty forced her to confront the absence at her core. You tried repeatedly to understand her, believing perhaps that your earnestness could break through the facade, shatter the mirrors, expose the hidden self beneath. Yet each effort only drove her further into shadow, into retreat, deeper into a silence more profound than words could breach. You noticed how she seemed drawn irresistibly toward men who ignored her deepest self, whose gazes brushed past her as if she barely existed. Those indifferent men became her obsession precisely because their eyes refused her reflection, refused to grant her soul recognition. This obsession with invisibility puzzled you deeply. Why crave the attention of someone incapable of seeing her clearly? Someone whose indifference bordered on cruelty, yet you sensed, beneath her apparent confusion, a disturbing clarity. She longed for men whose coldness rendered her invisible because, in invisibility, she found freedom from the weight of identity, from the burden of selfhood. Without reflection, she could become anyone or no one. Without recognition, she could surrender control, could disappear entirely, becoming a shadow shaped by another's gaze. And yet, she resented this dependence on invisibility, loathed the necessity of needing another's indifference to feel alive. Secretly, she despised herself for the paradox she embodied, desiring attention, yet craving abandonment, longing to be seen clearly, yet recoiling from the vulnerability true visibility demands. Her soul was caught between mirrors facing each other endlessly, multiplying reflections without substance, echoing desires without fulfillment. You realized, slowly and bitterly, that this obsession extended far beyond attraction or desire. It defined her entire being. She sabotaged relationships with those who loved sincerely because sincerity demanded exposure, demanded authenticity. Instead, she gravitated toward detachment, toward men whose eyes refused to validate her existence, whose indifference shielded her from confronting the hollowness she hid beneath her carefully constructed illusions. Yet within this paradox lay another, subtler truth, one even she could scarcely admit. She chose invisibility not merely to escape scrutiny, but because it allowed her an exquisite and hidden pleasure, the possibility of becoming someone else's creation, molded entirely by another's will. By forfeiting reflection, she surrendered autonomy, willingly handing over the power of identity to an indifferent other. In doing so, she experienced an unsettling thrill, a twisted liberation found in erasure, in the annihilation of selfhood. Her fascination with such men, then, was not weakness, but a form of existential defiance, a deliberate embrace of oblivion over the unbearable burden of defining her own existence. This defiance was evident in every gesture, every calculated withdrawal, every subtle cruelty she inflicted on those who offered her authentic love. She rejected warmth not from fear, but from contempt. Contempt for the vulnerability it imposed upon her. Contempt for the transparency it required. Yet despite this calculated strategy of evasion, You saw flashes of regret in her eyes, moments when the mask slipped, when the mirrors briefly faltered. In those fleeting instants, you glimpsed desperation, loneliness, and the profound exhaustion that comes from perpetual concealment. Those moments haunted you, not because they revealed weakness, but because they exposed the truth you'd long suspected, that she secretly longed for a gaze capable of piercing the illusions, strong enough to endure the nothingness at her core. Still, you hesitated, unwilling to become the indifferent mirror she seemed to crave. You refused to be cruel or dismissive simply to satisfy her twisted hunger. You clung stubbornly to your belief that love could heal, that sincerity could triumph over shadows. But each effort, each gentle approach, was met with resistance sharper than rejection, indifference carefully cultivated, coldly perfected. Finally, you confronted yourself with a bitter question. What if your kindness was cruelty in disguise? What if your insistence on warmth and sincerity imprisoned her further, denying her the release she sought desperately in abandonment? Perhaps true compassion required becoming the mirror without reflection, empty, indifferent, refusing her validation, forcing her at last to confront the void within herself, the emptiness she endlessly fled. This thought disturbed you deeply, yet resonated as truth. Perhaps cruelty and kindness intertwined far more intimately than you imagined. Perhaps the greatest gift you could offer was your own withdrawal, your silent refusal to reflect her carefully crafted illusions. Only by confronting absence could she begin to understand herself clearly. Only through indifference could she find authenticity. Yet even as you considered this harsh reality, your heart recoiled. To withdraw felt like betrayal, abandonment, an act of cruelty your very soul resisted. Yet within this paradox lay freedom, not merely hers, but yours as well. For in becoming the indifferent mirror, you freed yourself from her endless games, from the exhausting task of unraveling illusions she clung to so desperately. In the end, perhaps neither cruelty nor kindness offered true liberation, but something colder, simpler acceptance of her chosen invisibility, acknowledgement of the void she carried within. Your task was never to save or heal, but merely to witness, to gaze without reflection, to acknowledge without validation, to exist alongside her absence without attempting to fill it. The mirror without reflection, then, was not merely her secret craving, it became your own. You both hungered silently for indifference, not from cruelty, but from understanding. Only through emptiness could truth emerge. Only by refusing illusions could genuine clarity be achieved. And so, you stepped forward, eyes blank, gaze unreflecting, and allowed her to vanish willingly into the cold embrace of invisibility, where her truth waited, silent and unresolved. You've watched her from across the room countless times, seeing how her laughter brightens in proportion to the emptiness she's offered, how her eyes ignite at promises you never intend to fulfill. Strange, isn't it? How the slightest hint of neglect draws her closer, while warmth pushes her inexorably away. You've wondered why tenderness repels her, why sincerity feels like poison sliding down her throat. But the truth has always hidden within plain sight. She craves nothingness. She hungers for emptiness, a void vast enough to devour every illusion of independence, strength, and pride she ever cultivated. You misunderstood this hunger at first, assuming her attraction to distance, to silence, was merely a strategy of seduction. But beneath this calculated surface, a darker truth whispered itself into existence. She thrives only in absence, blossoms only when denied. Each kind gesture you offered was met with subtle disdain, every affectionate word triggering quiet withdrawal. Yet the moments you turned away, the instants your gaze fell cold, she leaned in with sudden urgency, seeking something elusive, intangible, unspoken. This emptiness is her feast, the cruel nourishment she secretly craves. Consider the way her posture changes, how her body softens subtly whenever you turn distant and remote. Watch closely as her breathing slows, eyes widening slightly. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation, a dark excitement stirred by the possibility of neglect. You've seen it now clearly enough. Her soul is ravenous, eager for the absence your indifference provides. Your kindness starves her, while your cruelty feeds her. But it is not cruelty she truly desires. It is the empty space cruelty leaves behind the void she can fill with her illusions, the blank canvas upon which she paints fantasies of surrender and submission. Yet you recoil instinctively from this truth. Your heart resists believing that emptiness could ever satisfy anyone's hunger. How could absence nourish a soul? Yet look closely again, her spirit quickens precisely when you withdraw affection, thrives most when you leave her starved of recognition and validation. The less you give, the more she wants. The emptier your promises, the brighter her eyes glow. Your hollow gestures, your insincere smiles, these are delicacies she savors, not despite their emptiness, but precisely because of it. You've attempted to rescue her from this self-imposed starvation countless times, believing sincerely that love could heal the void she nurtured so obsessively. Yet every genuine gesture was refused, every heartfelt word dismissed as trivial. She rejected warmth because warmth threatened the emptiness she clung to so fiercely, the void she cultivated to sustain her illusions. Your kindness was an intrusion, sincerity a violation because they threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of hunger and desire she carefully maintained. Why does she fear fulfillment? Perhaps because true satisfaction implies responsibility for her own happiness, for her own desires. But emptiness demands nothing from her except surrender. Absence relieves her of the burden of authenticity, allowing her to retreat into comfortable illusions, into fantasies she can control. You see clearly now, it is easier to dream of conquest than to experience genuine love. Easier to fantasize about submission than to confront real intimacy. She chooses emptiness because it is safe, predictable, a feast served endlessly without consequence or risk. Yet even in recognizing this truth, your confusion remains. How can someone prefer starvation to nourishment, emptiness to fulfillment? The answer lies deeper still, beneath illusions and games, beneath even her own conscious understanding. Her hunger is not for emptiness itself, but for the exquisite torment. Emptiness provides the delicious agony of always being slightly out of reach, perpetually unfulfilled. Desire, after all, thrives most powerfully in absence. It dies quickly when satisfied. By remaining unfulfilled, she preserves desire's intensity, ensuring the perpetual tension between what she has and what she longs for. You've noticed how her eyes glaze slightly with boredom when affection becomes routine, predictable, yet how quickly they brighten when uncertainty returns, when distance creates fresh longing. She is addicted to this tension, to the exhilarating despair of never quite achieving satisfaction. Her spirit requires the drama of pursuit, the thrill of uncertainty, the constant unresolved yearning. Emptiness, for her, is the ultimate aphrodisiac, the one thing powerful enough to sustain her craving indefinitely. In this perpetual state of starvation, she finds freedom a paradoxical liberation granted by never achieving what she desires. She is most herself when denied, most authentic when incomplete. Fulfillment, by contrast, terrifies her precisely because it represents finality, an end to desire, an end to the possibility of more. Thus, she deliberately sabotages intimacy, purposefully evades sincerity. She requires disappointment to sustain her excitement, needs neglect to feel alive. This cruel paradox defines her, shapes her, becomes the central truth of her existence. Yet even now, knowing all this, your heart resists acceptance. How can emptiness possibly sustain life? How can absence nourish desire so effectively? Yet the evidence is undeniable, written clearly in every word she withholds, every silence she cultivates. Your genuine love offers nourishment she consistently rejects. Your hollow promises provide sustenance she greedily consumes. This paradox defies reason, defies morality, defies everything you've ever believed about love and intimacy. Yet perhaps morality never belonged here. Perhaps what she seeks lies beyond good and evil, beyond compassion and cruelty. Perhaps her hunger is existential, a craving born from the fundamental emptiness of human existence itself. You glimpse now a deeper truth. Her emptiness mirrors your own, reflects the universal longing for meaning, for purpose, for significance. She simply embraces openly what you fear to confront, the profound void at the heart of all human desire. Could you, then, accept this feast of emptiness? Could you abandon sincerity, kindness, genuine affection in favor of hollow gestures, empty promises? Could you embrace cruelty to sustain her hunger, recognizing that cruelty itself is an illusion, a necessary tool designed to preserve her illusions of perpetual desire? These questions torment you, demand answers you feel unprepared to give. Yet perhaps true compassion requires confronting emptiness honestly, acknowledging openly the hunger it creates and sustains. In the end, you realize this feast of emptiness is not merely hers, it is yours as well. You've participated willingly, knowingly, drawn irresistibly toward the exquisite torment her hunger provides. You've become complicit in sustaining her illusions, in perpetuating the cruel tension between desire and fulfillment. Yet even now, you hesitate. Can you truly embrace emptiness as nourishment? Accept absence as the ultimate fulfillment? Perhaps these questions are impossible to answer. Perhaps their power lies precisely in remaining unresolved. Yet one truth emerges clearly: the feast of emptiness will continue indefinitely, sustained by the perpetual dance of desire and denial, attraction and rejection. She will continue craving precisely what you refuse to give, savoring starvation as nourishment, and you, in turn, will continue offering emptiness forever uncertain, forever unresolved, trapped willingly in the paradoxical cycle you both secretly crave. You stand now at the threshold of a door she never meant for you to open, a door without hinges, without handles, suspended in darkness. Behind it, silence, not a cold silence, nor a comforting one, but a silence that breathes softly, patiently waiting, whispering questions without words. You reach forward, fingers brushing emptiness, your palm pressing gently into absence itself, and somewhere, deep in the void she built, a faint tremor answers your touch, like laughter or weeping, indistinguishable, unanswered. Is it her surrender you feel, or your own? The shadows curl inward, folding gently around you both, consuming all certainty, all meaning. Here, in the silence she's offered. There is no victory, no defeat. Only the echo of desire endlessly retreating an unfinished whisper. A question suspended eternally in the darkness. What if emptiness was never hers alone, but the silent truth you've always feared to confront within yourself?